Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is the show where I get to talk about sports, I get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Today, my incredible guest, Jeff Byers. He's the CEO of Momentous, formerly Amp Human, former NFL player with the Seahawks, Broncos, and the Panthers, and won the 2004 national championship with the the real USC Trojans. Jeff, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, Michael. Thanks for having me.
I love having people from South Carolina on the show because they always try and tell me it's USC and then I correct them. I have no allegiance to either team, but I just think it's absolutely hysterical that they try to take that one from you guys. I don't get it.
Yeah, they're probably there first, but
they were like technically, but I mean, come on.
It's the wins and losses column defines that one.
Thank you. Exactly. I think I'm on board with that, man. But Jeff, very excited, obviously, to get to talk to you about your business. We're going to talk a little bit about this PR lotion that you guys sent me. Appreciate that. Excited to get to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing, why you're doing it. But the first question I have for everybody, Jeff, on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
That's a really long question. A long answer, I should say.
Okay, I was going to say the question's only a few words. So
yeah, I love sports because it's a way to connect in community, and it's a way to really push yourself and understand the limits of who you are as a person. But it brings people together, both from an athlete and a fan perspective. That's really, really unusual, and builds community where, right, people argue about. Like sports bring people together, not tear people apart. Where so much in the world tears people apart, sports can actually mend those things.
100%. I agree. It's like it's built-in friendship, right? If I see someone else in a bar wearing a Mets jersey, you're going to get the double finger guns. I'm going to talk about how the Mets have been on a terrible streak recently, right? And it's a commiserate. Yeah. But no, I like your point about the physical, the limitations and seeing where someone can go, not only physically, but mentally too. Right. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about the business side of what you've been through and how kind of you've done that. And also obviously on the sports side, not only just physically, again, you've had a few injuries in your career. Mentally, you've been cut a couple times from the NFL. You went on to do new things. You started a few games with the Panthers. It took a little while to get there, but you got there. So I think it's a pretty cool, pretty cool, man. Sports is fun. It's my favorite thing. That's why I get to do this. So let's talk positives first, man. 2004 national championship, blocking for Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart. That team considered potentially one of the best teams in all of college sports. That's kind of cool. You were on that team, right? That's not too bad. Got a ring to it.
Yeah, that one's for the ages, no doubt. It was an incredibly special opportunity. Obviously, I was at SC during the heyday Pete Carroll era when we won, and it's I go back to all the people I played with, and it's like, well, man, I really underachieved when you think about some of these careers and Heisman trophies and all of these accolades and award. But it was. Being a true freshman and starting on a national championship team as an offensive lineman was a hell of a ride, to say the least, and really, really fun. And just, when you're blocking for guys like Glendale White and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, lots of things are easy too. And so I was obviously super fortunate to be a part of that. And yeah.
I'm sure there was a lot of great tape on you that year, right? Just like, and then Reggie Bush hits this hole. So, well, who made the hole for him? It was Jeff, of course, right?
Yeah, sometimes. Reggie didn't need blocking a lot of times.
Not so much in college. That dude, he was an absolute animal. He was so much fun to watch. But hey, I got to see a lot of you too. I didn't even know it, Jeff. Look at this. 15, 16 years later, I figured out. I knew someone on that offensive line. You gotta love that. And man, I guess I'm sure you've gotten a million questions about this national title. It's such a cool opportunity. I don't think I've had too many national title winners here on the show, so it's a first for me too. So I appreciate you coming on and checking that box for me. But what is that like? I mean, you're 18 years old, 19 years old, as you said, true freshman starting on a national championship winning team. You guys pretty much dominated almost every single game that season. At what point are you kind of like, this is easy? Like, I can't wait to do this again next year, which you guys ended up almost doing.
Yeah, honestly, like it's pretty surreal when you think about it, and almost fantasy land. Like when you go into it of that as this is my idea of football, is like we just cruise by all these teams, we crush everybody, and we win national championships, and it's all fun and games, and winning is really, really fun. So yeah, it's totally it sets the bar very high for you, but also reminds you of what winning looks like and how you want to continue to strive to get that and be around environments and teams and people with that kind of energy, and surround yourself to always try to find that. Because when you have that sauce, it's incredible.
And do you realize it in the moment when you're like 18, 19? Obviously you can look at it and back at it now, but at 19, like, could you realize what was kind of happening and what you were learning and the lessons that were coming with this?
Yeah, if you would have asked me when I was 19, I'd been like, hell yeah.
Of course. This is how you win. That's about it.
The answer is no. Me, like a lot of people when they were 19 was a punk, probably. Like, I was not grounded, did not have the worldview that I got. And interesting journey. Like that year, right, I absolutely destroyed my hip in the last game of the season, and ended up having 2 hip surgeries and was told I was never going to play football again, which gave me perspective, like incredible perspective instantly. Like, you're ripping away something that I loved more than anything, or thought I loved, and what defined me or thought defined me at the time, was such a humbling experience. And I would say, if you ask me when I was 19 versus 20, my perspective changed drastically, of the world, of what sports meant to me, of what football meant to me, and what the normal was. But as a 18, 19-year-old kid on that USC team, my perspective of what the world was like was very, very different. I mean, just at SC, we had Will Ferrell and Snoop and all these other crazy characters that were just like high-fiving you at practice. It was like the NFL doesn't even compare to those couple of years at USC when we were just absolutely dominant.
No, I mean, that USC team, you can liken it with the Hurricanes teams back in the 80s, right? Like, where they were way more popular than any of the NFL players in their town. And it wasn't even close, right? Those Miami, the U teams. And that was going to really be my next question. I was going to lead into it, but you already got there for me. I mean, what that roller coaster of emotions going from winning that national championship, freshman 19, ruling the world, to horrible injury. You're going to sit out the next year, as you said, potentially never even play football again. What did you learn in that just short amount of time about yourself, about football, about sports that really has stuck with you ever since?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I learned is sports don't define people, they help make people. And it was one of those moments of there's so much more to life than being an athlete. But an athlete can help shape you and really create you in a special way. And so it was really this reckoning of, what else do I love? What else am I passionate about? And what do I really love about being an athlete, right? It's the challenge. It's the always under the microscope, knowing that you have to perform to be where you're at, right? And the work and dedication it takes to get there, of this, pressure cooker to make diamonds that I loved, of what is that stress to absolutely put yourself in the right position to win and to always win, that I really found that I loved. And it was all right, hard things happen. I'm going to be that person who just always gristles through anything. And so I think that's what it really defined. I had to take a big step back and say, who am I? Mm-hmm. I'm one of these, I'm very, very blessed and fortunate that I had great people around me to help me kind of bump me back in a place of hey, you're really smart. You should think about other things. Football doesn't define you, choice words, pick yourself up, mm-hmm. Type of thing. And I ended up saying, okay, right, football might not ever happen again, but I'm at USC, which is a, incredible academic institution. Why don't I take advantage of it? And I ended up graduating undergrad in 3 years and got accepted into the Marshall School of Business to get my MBA while I was still under scholarship and still playing ball. And that was a tremendous opportunity to me, right, to leapfrog and to really take a lot from the game as well, take more than I should have. Mm-hmm. And so that to me, I would say, so I missed my whole second year and my whole third year. So I had 2 hip surgeries about 6 months apart when I was 19 years old. And then I missed my whole second year, which is the year we lost to Texas in the Rose Bowl, which was horrendous. And then my third year, I tried to come back during training camp and had blew my back out and had 2 back surgeries on L4, L5. So I missed 2 years back to back, which was really hard. And it was kind of one of those things as an offensive lineman, hips and backs are pretty important. And like, it was one of those like, okay, well, I'm glad I got my life together and really thought about, life after ball. So yeah, but I was obviously super lucky to come back and play. And I was a 2-time captain with Pete Carroll, and obviously had a tremendous opportunity to play in the NFL, but yeah, we'll get there.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get there. And we don't need to talk too much. One of the greatest football games of all time. Obviously we saw what Vince Young did, 467 total yards. Who's counting, right? You unfortunately were not a part of that team. That was also, again, like that USC team, those 2 years were just 2 of the greatest football teams of all time in college sports. And it's absolutely incredible. You got to be a part of at least one of them, the one that won. It stinks. Like, what's it like then? And we'll move on with this conversation in a second, but what's it like? You're going from winning to being told you might not ever play football again to just this helpless feeling of being like, I can't, there's physically nothing I can do about this right now.
Oh yeah. Right. You just learn to control what you can control. Right. And
love it. I try and tell that to as many people as I can on a daily basis. Control what you can control.
And there's very little in life that you can control that actually matters. So, but if you just worry about, right, I don't know, they're 2 stupid things and they come from sports, like your attitude and your effort.
Yep.
Right? Two things. We get to wake up and we get to choose how we want to respond to situations, and we get to choose how hard we work. And guess what? They're both really important and ultimately dictate the outcome. And only if you got a good attitude or crappy attitude, and only
it's fine.
Yeah. And only if you're busting your ass, right? And, like, that's the only person who can judge that is you. So those are the 2 things I think about on a daily basis and love. But those are the 2 things that I like that got me through some hard times. It was like, hey, yeah, I could be down and out, or I could actually figure this out.
100%.
Yeah, but being on the sidelines of that game was horrendous. Right? I mean,
yeah,
we had won. Like, we were high-fiving, everybody else on the side. We were taunting Texas and all that.
Well, and, we can all come on. We can all do a little horns down. That's fine.
Oh, and then Vince Young just destroyed us.
It was incredible, man.
I mean,
the game was incredible.
We had that 4th and 1 play, and
we don't have to relive it. We all saw it. I watch it every single year. It's one of those like 3 games. I watch the Oklahoma State Boise State game with the hook and ladder, and then the Statue of Liberty. I try and watch that game every year. I watch the Giants 2 Super Bowl wins over the Patriots because we're probably not getting back to the Super Bowl anytime. And I try and watch that game every year because those are just some of the greatest football games I've ever seen in my life. So we don't have to relive it. Go on YouTube, check it out. It's an incredible game. But I think it's something you said that I really, really did like was obviously you can control what you control. We talked about that a little bit, but you turned a negative into a positive. And so many people dwell on the negative and turn it into more of a negative. Thinking negative thoughts is not going to get you anywhere positive. It's just going to get you into more negative opportunities. And you obviously were controlling you're controlling your effort, controlling your attitude, very positive about it. And then went on, as you said, to graduate in 3 years, got your MBA immediately. At what point did you realize that, hey, as much as I love football, hey, starting offensive lineman on a national championship winning team probably have some pretty good prospects in a few years with the NFL? When did you realize, like, just in case, I'm confident I'm coming back from this injury. It's not even a question. But just in case, let's kind of, throw a potential plan B somewhere in there.
It was literally my going. So I had my first hip surgery, call it 4 months later, went back to that same surgeon. And he looked at me and he was like, yo, like, this is like,
yikes. Not looking good, man.
There are 3 people in the world that you need to go see. And I like you should have went to one of those originally, like, and so on. And like, you have a very complex case. That was the time when it was like breakdown, emotional roller coaster of like, you're screwed. Like, football is not what you know of it today. And yeah, that was the moment, was like, okay, what else? Like, what else is there? I remember having an emotional call with my old man, and my old man had some very choice words for me about figuring life out, and you better not let this moment define you in a bad way, because it's a defining moment in all the right ways. So, I mean, like way easier to look back on it, but at the time it was not a good day/week for me.
Yeah, week, month, year, I'm sure. It was pretty long, but again, the perseverance. You sit out for 2 years, as you said. You have awful hip injury. Have a little bit of problems with your back, as you said. Offensive lineman, kind of need your hips, kind of need your back. You eventually do come back and play for the Trojans again. You do go undrafted in the NFL draft, but your old friend, your old coach, Pete Carroll, does come and say, hey, come try out for the Seahawks. Didn't quite work out. You went and hung out with the Broncos for a little bit. Didn't quite work out, but you eventually made it to the Panthers. Started, I think, was it 7 games, if I'm not mistaken? Played in over a season's worth of games while you were there. How much, like what does that take, man? Like, what does that take to go through just those 2 brutal years, coming back and actually, I mean, after the Seahawks cut you, your old coach cut you. He's like, oh man, maybe I'm not cut out for this. You go and try again. You don't really like how much fortitude do you have, man? What are you made of to be able to put yourself through this over and over and over again?
Well, I will say I'm not unique in the sense that a lot of people get cut in the NFL. A lot of people, going to play for Pete, I probably made a bad choice on where I went as an undrafted free agent. I was really fortunate, got to pick wherever I wanted to go. And I didn't look at depth charts. I didn't look at anything. I'm like, Pete's my guy.
Coach.
Right? And I'm really close to Pete. And, I probably, there were better opportunities out there. There were a lot better opportunities out there from a depth chart perspective, all that. But guess what? I played more snaps in the preseason for the Seahawks than anybody else in the NFL, right? Like, I played so many snaps because they trusted me, and Pete trusted me to play and go and perform. So unlike a lot of people, like, I didn't get just 3rd and 4th string snaps. I got real 2nd string, 3rd string snaps in the preseason, which got a ton of game tape out there and a ton of experience. The depth chart didn't work in my favor. And that happens. And right, it worked in my favor with the Panthers, right? Somebody got hurt. I was next man up, and I just never gave my spot back, right? I was always the next guy after that. And that just happens. Like unless you're a really high draft pick, there is no guarantees in the NFL. And people don't realize this. Like, a third of the NFL is made up of undrafted players.
Yep.
And it was an incredible opportunity, but getting cut by Pete was super, super hard. I'm guessing it was really hard for him too. I'm
sure he had a couple extra pieces of gum in his mouth for that one. Yeah.
I've never talked to him about it, but someday I'm sure we will.
Yes.
On that, and it's just one of those really fascinating things. But it's also because I took so many snaps. There were and we knew that my agent and I knew we were going to get cut. We had other opportunities that were out there, right? And so I jumped on one quick and ended up in Denver for that whole season. Right. I practiced a lot, put it that way. And I got activated to the active roster at the very end, but that was the season in Denver when Josh McDaniels got fired halfway through. It was just a complete debacle. It was, when I say what is my worst experience as an athlete? It was like being a part of a completely dysfunctional team at that time, right? Coach got fired, players boycotted. It was just terrible. I couldn't imagine a worse. People go through that a lot more. At USC, never went through that stuff, right? We were winning. Don't know what losing is.
Yep.
And to get a coach fired mid-year and all that was a very unique thing. And the environment was just not – when that happens, it's not a good environment. Players are out for players. Coaches are out for coaches. And it's just a bad thing, and it happens time and time again. Anyways,
winning cures all. So I can understand if you're losing, it's probably not going to be a great environment. It's a funny thing, right? Culture. Losing cultures don't really exist. It's the winning ones that stay sustained, and that's how you actually have a culture. It's really interesting kind of how that works. And I think it's really important to understand. Again, I know you said a lot of people get cut in the NFL, but not too many people have had what seems like multiple career-ending injuries in college, came back, persevered, and eventually started to start some games that deep into their NFL career. So I do want to make sure that you do get your kudos. I know you're a humble guy, but still, it's absolutely incredible what you did. And what learn from all this, right? You learned, I always try and tell people, and, you know, hey, mom, if you're listening, but I learned how not to drive from my mom. I learned everything not to do. So now I feel like I'm a very good driver because I saw all the things that I didn't like and I just didn't do them. Right. So you learn things through positives. You can learn things through negatives. Through your football career, you know, you talked about environment. You know, we kind of just touched on culture for a second. Obviously, you talked about winning and leading, right? What are all these things that you gathered through your time at USC, through high school football, through, you know, your couple years in the NFL, that you were then able to say, I'm confident that I could lead a group of people in something that I believe in, to the point where we can have a very successful business in something?
Yeah, a couple of things, right? Perseverance and dedication, right, is super important. Okay, so sports are a great example for business. You know, and I'll go back and say, like, Pete Carroll could lead almost any organization of people, period, right? Military, sports, business, right? Because he's a great leader of humans and he understands people. And he understands how to motivate them. And he's also incredibly passionate. So I go into the things that I learned from sports for business, right? It's you control what you can control, right? Winning is really, really hard. And you got to lose to win. And it's not, right? Wins and losses happen every play in practice. They happen every snap in a game. And you're going to lose. And you got to get used to losing. And you got to get used to getting beat. It's about how you stacking those little baby competitions, those little baby moments together to get a big win. Because it's about how are we winning over the long term, not how are we winning like every single play. And so it teaches you that to have that grit, to prioritize, make decisions, do those things. It teaches you, right, that it's really, really hard, right? Really, really, really hard. And that you got to dedicate a lot to get to a level that is very hard, right? Like nothing's given to you. Even the greatest, highest talent athletes, it's really, really hard to get to where you're at. You got to have the talent to get there, but you also got to put a lot in. It taught me a lot about, I have this line, I call it, the ball is always snapped. And for me, that's, you always got to make a decision. And the lack of decision, you always will get beat. And so for me in business, I have this thing, the ball always gets snapped. You always got to make a decision and go. And you're going to get beat, and that's okay. But what's not okay is not to put your hand back down on the ground and the ball gets snapped again. So the ball gets snapped, you got to make a decision. You're never going to have all the information, but you got to use the best and the most amount of information you have and your past experiences so that you can react and move to that. And the last thing is really, it's about people and team and having the right, and that's a hard thing, right? When you're on a team as an athlete, you don't pick the team. And in the NFL and in college, like it feels, right, it is kind of a revolving door and there's always people coming in, but you aren't making those decisions. But you see them and you're like, oh, you know, you get it. But in business and being a CEO and a leader, that team, that people aspect is something, now I get it, right? Now I understand what one turd can do, right? And how they can hurt the whole organization and why you got to move. And it's not just always about talent. It's not always just about performance. It's about culture, talent, performance, growth, all of these things that are put together. But the one thing that sports teaches you, move really fast on people. Like, I mean, in the NFL, like I lived on the bottom of the roster for a good part of my career, right? And that part of the roster churns. And every day matters, right? Every snap matters. And it's one of those things that you've got to be finding more talent. If you think you have the best people in the world, you're wrong in your business. And that's really, really hard because people decisions are hard, right? Because we're all humans but you ultimately, you can't win if you don't have the right people on the field. If you don't have the right people or the butts in the seat. And that's a hard thing. I never got it. I never fully grasped it until I had to be in that that position. And it took me a while, and I'm still getting better at the people and how do we make decisions faster, and how do we get the best talent, and how do we motivate those people, because it is so, so important.
I love that. That is incredible. And yeah, I think a lot of those points, I mean, just the last one that you made is the most, kind of lack of a better term, most human, right? Like it's, you know what it's like to be that person that gets cut. You know what it's like to, I'm sure, have your friend, your best friend, the guy that stands right next to you. I'm sure you know what that's like to get cut, but you understand, hey, if we do not have the best talent, we will not win. What is the most important thing in sports, and most of the time in business, is winning. Winning, as I said before, cures all. And you obviously do understand that, but it's got to suck, right? It's got to suck to have to do that sometimes, but I think it's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, obviously some interesting news recently with AMP merging, if I'm not mistaken, with Momentous, but you're the CEO of this company. Let's start with AMP, I guess, before we get into the merger and everything. Where did the idea come from? What exactly is it? And why do I love this lotion so much, man?
All great questions.
Thank you. Sorry for asking them all at once. I just got them out. You're good at just kind of going on a nice little monologue, so I'll let you do your thing.
Yeah, people tell me I talk too much, especially my wife. About 6 years ago, I joined a really early stage biotech. Really shortly after retiring, I did a short stint in finance and realized instantly that
finance sucks. Yeah. Finance sucks. I hated every second in it. Sorry, I need
it wasn't for me. It's for some people. Mm-hmm. But I'm a doer. I'm a builder. I'm a team person. I was meant to run through walls, because I have a really hard noggin and I'm good at running into things, but also that's just my mentality. Anyways, so I joined this early stage biotech, and I was employee number 4 or 5-ish, call it, but part of the first kind of team that was hired. And they brought me in for kind of two reasons, really. Help raise some capital, because I had a great network from finance days in NFL. And 2 is they had this crazy idea to use this technology outside of pharma, medical, and in human performance sports. Looking back on it, this company was way earlier than I thought. And, I have no science background, no biotech background, right? I took oceanography in college. I took business classes and things like that. But now I get chemistry and physiology and all that really well. And it's something I've been passionate about regardless. So they had this crazy technology of how do they deliver drugs through the skin. And so they basically developed a transdermal drug delivery technology. Big, long word. But we had this crazy idea. What if we could deliver a non-drug, get a basic vitamin, mineral supplement into the body, and actually affect human performance and optimization? And that was the birth of what became PR Lotion that you're holding up. And this passion project, right? This passion project of, can we deliver something in a very safe, effective, efficient manner and unlock a molecule that can have epic and really incredible implications for athletes? And that molecule is sodium bicarbonate, also known as baking soda. Nice. And we call it bicarb, but so bicarb's role in the body is super simple. When we train hard and we train long, we produce acid. We commonly refer to it as lactic acid, but in science's sake, it's called hydrogen ions. It's just an acid. It's not lactic acid. Regardless, we can go down a science rabbit hole, but we produce acid. These hydrogen ions build up in our muscles. And they all ultimately are a limiting factor in our ability to go a little harder, to recover from intense bouts and recover the next day because of some chemical damage. With all of that said, you can't take sodium bicarbonate orally in effective doses, right? How come I, as a football player and a pro football player, never heard of it? Go back to elementary school when you made a volcano. You put vinegar in it, which is, imagine that being your stomach acid, and you put baking soda in it, and it explodes. And that's what happens in your gut when you take sodium bicarbonate orally, or you get really bad GI distress. And so outside of track cycling, rowing, and a very small subset of track athletes, nobody ever used it, because guess what? It's not a performance enhancer. Crapping your pants, ever, right? So basically, there's this molecule, sodium bicarbonate, that has 50 plus years of research behind it. The International Olympic Committee says it's one of the few very effective, well-studied, safe, and permitted molecules to use to enhance sports performance. Problem is, you can't take it. Orally, it just sucks. And so there needed to be a technology to unlock it. That enter this biotech. So this passion project started within this biotech company. And a little over 3 years ago, we had gotten enough traction. We were working with some groups in the special forces and some pro teams and some Tour de France champions and like incredible athletes across the board. We basically saw we had enough traction. That biotech, the problem is they were a biotech going into phase 2 clinical trials, and they wanted nothing to do with a commercial company, which I was super passionate about. So myself and another early employee there, basically were like, we love human performance and optimization. Like it's kind of who we are as people, and we really wanted to build something special. And so we ended up spinning out PR Lotion and creating the company that Amp Human. And we built it on this broader vision of let's create a human performance company that's at the forefront of human performance, pushing the limits of what is possible. And that's ultimately where we went. And we have this incredible product, PR Lotion. It's used within 100 plus pro and college teams. We've got some of the best athletes in the world as investors in the business that have won Tour de France's, broke world records, or just incredible, like pro bowlers, all pro and things like that. But PR Lotion for me was always this springboard. I have this vision that human performance is like a puzzle, right? And I say performance, I mean optimization, all of that. Like whether you're Tom Brady or the weekend warrior, or just somebody trying to live a little longer, be a little more resilient. Like we're always trying to, how do we optimize? How are we living with intent and purpose? And that is so important. So I think human performance is this puzzle. And all these puzzle pieces are out there, right? You throw in sleep, you throw in training, you throw in diet, you throw in exercise, but it's this complicated puzzle. And for all of us, it's a little different. And so ultimately my goal was, let's create a human performance company led by a revolutionary, IP, patented, clinical trial proven product, which is PR Lotion. But then how do we string around that and be at the forefront with the best minds in the world to build a systematic based approach to human performance and start intertwining more products and knowledge and content to that athlete to ultimately, not just make a cool product that's PR Lotion that, at the end of the day is revolutionary, but it's also niche. Like people don't use PR Lotion every day because people don't train like that every day, If you're Geraint Thomas or Kipchoge, who are the world's best at what they do, yeah, they use it every day. But if you're me, I don't use it every day because I don't train hard every day because I can't, because I have a job and a family, But I do try to optimize my body. So how do we create a system that puts together some of these puzzle pieces? And that's really where, we had PR Lotion, this great vehicle where we started talking to this company Momentous that we just merged with end of June, 1st of July, essentially. And Momentous is one of the best they are a best in class sports nutrition supplementation company. They sell into 150 pro and D1 colleges, which when I heard that, I was like, what? That is near impossible to do in that space. But they have all this traction because it's the cleanest, safest, purest sports nutrition and products in the market, and it was designed with the best people in. So when we're thinking about, Amp Human, we're at the forefront of human performance, we're trying to push the limits, How do we bolt on additional products in a portfolio to ultimately bolster and give more to our customers, But wrap it around with education and knowledge. But it's how do you create that system-based approach and be more than just a solution and be a solutions-oriented company rather than a solution company.
First off, I want to say my favorite thing, the reason why I do this is because I love listening to people who are extremely passionate about something. And it's very, very clear that you are very passionate about human optimization and performance. And I think it is absolutely fantastic. And the chemistry side of it, most of which I do not understand, but I appreciate the little lesson in that and how it works, right? And I think, one thing about performance that's always been very interesting and a little confusing to me, is so much, and really not just performance, it's just all of it, right? Everything is so reactive rather than being proactive. And I feel like PR Lotion is one of the first things that's maybe not the first, but it's one very important step to being much more proactive about not feeling like crap the next day, not hurting the next day. Believe me, I do not train that much, but a 2-mile run is still very difficult. And I love this thing because I do not feel the same way after a 2-mile run as I used to, right? So I appreciate you guys for that. So I guess not only is it the optimization, and as you said, kind of creating that hub and spoke model, but how do you make sure that you're being proactive about a lot of these things? Because I think that's going to lead to the most optimization. At least that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that's the push to why we came together as two kind of similar sized companies with incredible access with the best people in the world. Like we have to bring, you can't just be one solution, right? Like right now, like you got to go find all these puzzle pieces in various different ways. And guess what? For a consumer, that's a heck of a lot of work. And when you don't have a source of information or a source of truth, it's really hard. And so how do we think about building this foundational piece? And I think it's like, when we think about the system, I think where we're building Momentous to go is, how do we take input and data, right? Have some sort of way that we analyze and say, right, Michael, based upon X, Y, and Z, right? Longevity, immune health, and performance are the most important. Here are the 3 things that are most important, that are to you. And ultimately close that with education and content. Because we as consumers don't want to be do X, right? We want to be do X because of Y. And here's some great content from not just the brand, but from other places that say these things are really important and the science behind them. And so it's, how do you close that loop? Because ultimately, you're right. If LeBron James and those people don't spend $1 million a year on human performance on that to be reactive, they're doing it proactive. Okay, what are the things that I need to do to be? And most things in human performance aren't reactive, right? If you really want to optimize, there are some things you can do the day of. There are some things you can do the day after. And there's a lot of things that you need to do habitually, lifestyle, et cetera, right? I mean, a great example is all this crazy research is coming out around collagen and vitamin C. It's from UC Davis by a guy named Keith Barr. And basically, it's one of the few things that can strengthen connective tissue health, right? And so when we think about joints, ligaments, and as we age, our ability to like use collagen and produce it in our body continues to decline, right? So we age, we get worse joints, all of those things. But this research is coming out to say, if you use collagen and Vit C in this ratio before you work out, it has big implications for connective tissue health. But guess what? It's not reactive. You have to do it. You have to start a long time and you have to continue to do it. It's got to be a habitual thing. If we think about longevity in sport, both for you and I who are not competitive athletes anymore, but we're trying to continue to push, those things are really important, but they are not reactive. They are all about habitual routine and understanding why you need to do those things, because it's really important that I'm broken. I will raise my hand. Like, I hit my head for a living. Like, brain health and longevity are the 2 most important things in my world. Like, I think about those things on a daily basis. I paid the man, and the man's going to come back, and I need to figure out how do I do that. And so I'm really passionate about how do we think about those things. And then I love performance. Like, I love to go and crush myself. That's just who I am. Anyways, I'm ranting here, but
you're doing great, man. You're doing great. And I think it's really one thing that's really interesting. I mean, first off, thank you for putting me and you in the same category in literally anything. So I just want to say thanks. Appreciate you on that one. You really didn't need to do that, but you're going to be on the show no matter what. So I appreciate it. But I think one thing that's really interesting is it's not just athletes, right? Like, I've spent time with family members and it's like, oh, my legs hurt. It's like, well, did you stretch? They're like, no, I'm just going to take an Advil. It's like, well, I mean, I stretch every day because my legs hurt, and now my legs don't hurt after I stretch. It's just like one of those things. I think it's a mindset thing. How do you get that through to people for them to understand, hey, like, just because you're a guy that sits at a cubicle or a lady that does, this XYZ every day, this is why it's so important to be optimizing for performance, even if you're not trying to become one of the greatest athletes that ever exists, and even if you're not trying to make the NFL. I just want to feel good, man. Like, I wake up with my hips hurt, so I stretch. My hips don't hurt. I know so many people that wake up with their legs. My dad wakes up, his hips hurt, so he takes an Advil. It's like, what are you doing? There's other ways to get around this, and I just don't understand the reactive versus the progressive nature of things.
Well, right. Instant gratification is in our DNA as humans. We like things that we can see and feel immediately, and that's why I think a system is so important when we think about this. Of like, how do you take inputs, ultimately give recommendations, and then close a loop to say doing X, Y, and Z does X, but like, yeah, I should.
It takes a little while though, right?
Yeah. It takes constant reminders, and habits are hard to form, right? So like, oh man, I'll stretch one day, right? The next day it's like, oh, man, that's a pain in the ass. I'm not going to stretch again, right? Like, or but that's just how we act. And so we got to break that cycle. And it's not just like, here's the magic marker. Like it's the cure. It will solve anything, right? Like it's not that. It is, how do you slowly drip? And it's not do 100 things at once. It's start with one, right? And you expand. And so I don't know, like as we build out Momentous, it's how do we create this level system, but how do we create the constant reminders, the touch points, right? To help consumers understand why a collagen Vit C is so important for joint health and longevity, why omega-3s in the right ratios are actually one of the most important things we can do for your brain, right? Like, but it's not like those things are things you don't feel on a daily basis, but like they are proven by science, right? Not by me, not by you, by people that are actually smart. No offense.
Hey, yeah, wait, man, you had me on such a high before.
I put you back in my category. You're welcome.
It's true. I appreciate that.
But right, like, but it's that constant reminder. And how do we close that loop to say doing X because of Y, because of who you are, doing X does this, and the constant reminders, because once you get into this habitual loop, and then you can start seeing the outcomes, we as humans start to get habitual in how we think about things. And right, ultimately, the human race, we've always, like from a millennia ago, like how do we live longer? How do we run faster? How do we get smarter? Like we are on this constant phase of like better, right? Live longer, run faster, right? Eat more meat, whatever it was at that time. And we're still on that. The problem is we're just in the infancy of what we know and understand about human physiology, brain chemistry, and what we actually need to be optimized and what's important, right? I mean, yeah. So
I love all of it, and this is probably gonna be my last question. Outside of, hey, where can we find all this stuff? But that sounds fantastic in theory. That sounds incredible in theory. What are you guys doing at Momentous to actually put this theory in motion so that this actually starts to happen more and more every day?
So that's an incredible question, and
thank you.
That is my rock. And my team's rock that we get to push up the mountain. So right, our north, that is like the North Star of where we go. You can't build a system without products, and you can't build a system if you're not at the forefront, because if you're just some dude slinging things out of your garage, like you have no trust for the consumer. So for me, it was build PR lotion, put it at the forefront, do things that nobody's ever been done before, win innovation contracts, do clinic, like we work with special forces and we've been funded by the government and all these cool things, right? So now we're at the forefront. Now add in best-in-class products, right? Because you can't have a system if you don't have anything to get out of the system. You can't have thought leaders if you aren't doing something special. So it's like this step progression. So over the next 6 to 12 months, our goal and vision of the company is to start having an actual system where you come in and you say, these are the things that are important to me, and say, okay, here's some recommendations and here's some incredible content around it, and start that journey. It's hard, right? And it's going to take a lot of time and effort, but we had to get ourselves at the forefront to have the right people around the table. We had to have the right products to actually start like having interventions to humans, right? Now we got to figure out how do we pull in data, inputs, all of that, and start spinning it out. But right now we have the best products on market, right? Cleanest, safest, right? And then we have a patented product that nobody else has, which is pretty cool in PR lotion. And right now it's much more of the education drip campaign of like, why this, why that? Like, you had questions, plant versus whey protein and all those things as we build out this system. But yeah, it's a step process. I feel like we're in a good place to do that because of the advisors and the best human performance experts we have involved in the company, the athletes, and then ultimately, as the team that we've built this, how do we build on top of that? It's not going to happen overnight. I wish it could, but that would take a lot of money.
Where's the fun if it's overnight? Come on.
Yeah, true fact.
Where's the fun? Like, that's boring. Like, you have to grind. Dude, I've done, I don't know, like 200 and 300 episodes of this. I'm not getting paid yet, but man, when I do that check, oh, that check's going to be sweet, Jeff. I cannot wait for it. But sincerely, man, this has been absolutely incredible. As I said, I love the whole reason I do this, and why I don't care that I don't get paid to do this is listening to people like you who are extremely passionate about helping others, especially. I think it's absolutely incredible. One more time, Jeff Byers, CEO of Momentous, formerly of Amp Human, NFL player at the Seahawks, Broncos, Panthers, 2004 national champion. Jeff, where can we find you online? Where can we find Amp Momentous online? And where can we buy, one more time, PR Lotion? If you're training at all, this stuff is incredible. I don't trade very hard, as I said, but my goodness, do I feel a million times better if I use this stuff. So sincerely appreciate you on that one, man. Where can we find all this stuff so we can just follow along in the journey, be as healthy and as incredible as we can as human beings?
So least important is me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Social media and me don't get along.
Nice. Keep it that way. It's probably better for your brain health, honestly. So
seriously, it's very much better for my brain health. Company, best place to just find us is amphuman.com. Someday we'll be not amphuman.com, but it'll be redirected. So you can find everything there, the power of technology, the internets and interwebs and all of that. So everything you can find there, all of the sports nutrition that we talked about and PR Lotion, go check it out. It's, I mean, obviously I'm crazy passionate about the space, but it's really cool. And I'm just fortunate to be in the same room with a lot of people that are way smarter and way more talented than I am.
I appreciate it, man. You and me both, right? You and me both. As I said, Jeff Byers, CEO of Momentous, formerly Amp Human. Jeff, sincerely appreciate your time today, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.